Hello, everybody, and welcome to the March edition of What Jen Has Been Up To. And today I want to show you some artwork that I have created this month. So we're going to start with a couple of cards. At a recent event I hosted, I gave my attendees a 6x6 sampler pack of the Lovely Garden DSP, which is what my first couple projects are. And I challenged them to create either a layout or a couple of cards. And I gave them a couple of sketches and ideas. And so these were the ideas that I shared with my group. And so I just made a simple card with the Lovely Garden DSP. And then I was able to add in, a circle cut, and then I think that's Pool Party, and then another white one. I used the Spotlight on Nature Dies, and then I used the Greetings Ephemera pack for my sentiment, and then these little flower sequins are the embellishment that goes with the Lovely Garden Suite. So that's one card, and then here's a second card, another very simple card that is the same exact DSP pack. I was able to use a little tag die cut from the Birthday Celebrations stamp and die set. And then this sentiment came from the Ocean Friends stamp set. And then just added a little bit of DSP, made a really simple card. And the two cards that I made, so let me show you again. These two cards were the scraps that were left over after I created the layout. So I created the layout first. And what I wanted to showcase was how easy it was to take 6x6 samplers or 6x6 pattern paper, DSP, and make them into a layout. And so what I did is I cut all of my papers down to 2x5, and I added them down at the bottom. And so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different pieces of paper. And I repeated the pattern the opposite direction on the other page. And so I cut them to 2x5, and then that left me with a 1x6 strip of paper that I was able to utilize for some of the little embellishments and things like that. And then I did have a 2x5 piece left over because there ended up being 3 of them, which is how I was able to get the cards as well. And so I just added the patterns down at the bottom, repeating the colors, added in, some of the purples and blues and greens and black and white. And I just wanted to keep it like fairly simple and kind of, the colors to flow. I added a strip of garden green cardstock, the two-tone cardstock at the top. And then I added some glimmer paper underneath. This actually came from Close to My Heart. It is a shimmer trim in the bluebell color. And I thought that worked really well with this, I think it's boho blue or balmy blue that was down in this pattern paper here. And then I used some black two-tone cardstock for my photo mats on the layout. I used a stamp set from Celebration called Documenting the Day, and it had these big chunky day letters that you can stamp and then cut out and use as a title, and then lots of little sentiments that go with it. So some kind of day, right? So a perfect day, and there you'll see a couple more in the layouts that I'm showing you. And then these again are the little flower sequins from the Lovely Garden Suite. So that's the first layout that I wanted to show you. And now I want to move into my next set of layouts, which is the Meant to Be. And that might not even be the title of the layouts. I have the actual pack here. Let's see if I can come up with what the actual, it's Meant to Be. So this is the Meant to Be workshop kit, the scrapbooking workshop that is designed by Stampin' Up. And I cut it just as directed, and I put it together just as directed. However, I did some Jen stepping up just to show you a little bit of how you can take it from basic, which this is basic. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, but it's basic, and then elevate it just a tiny bit. And I showed this in a video last month showing you how to use the workshop kits, but I actually finished it. So I had created this first layout and it was unfinished. I needed to add the journaling piece in. And when I was adding the journaling piece, so this little blue piece here, pool party, is a sticker, but I wanted the hexagon die to go behind it. So I wanted to put like a backing on it. So I took the Meant to Be bundle, which has a set of hexagon dies that come from small to large. It's kind of a medium-sized one here. And I made a background to put my journaling piece on. And while I cut that, it cuts not only the solid shape, but it also cuts the outline. So that's how I have these two little pieces. They look like brackets, but they ended up being like just a perfect little touch of black on the other page to accent the, you know, kind of like draw your eye from corner to corner here, and draw your eye also to the embellishing that's going on here. So I was able to take the outline and utilize that, as well as just the plain hexagon shape. And then I cut a second hexagon and I cut them like that. So I put it in my trimmer and just cut off the piece like this. And I was able to make a tab for up here and a tab for over here. So I thought this was just a perfect little touch of black to kind of tie in with the bumblebees here and bring this and give it some grounding for the layout here. The other thing I added was the blue photo mat behind the photo here, which I don't know if that's on the original instructions. It might be, but I can't really tell. And then the last thing I did is I inked the edges of my white paper with Petunia Pop, which is this like purpley color ink. Okay, so this is the first layout. The second layout is this gorgeous like bright yellow layout. And I needed to tone it down just a tiny bit. Now, if you look in the instructions here, that doesn't look very bright. Okay, the yellow really doesn't look very bright. And they use black and white photos, which I think is a fantastic way to also tone down the yellow. And maybe that's why it doesn't look so bright in this photo. But when you get the papers on your desk, they are bright yellow. So I really needed to kind of tone that down. So what I did is I took a sanding block, so like a nail file, essentially, and I sanded the paper. And then you can see just some spots where I took off like a bit more color than I intended to. Maybe there was something underneath it when I was rubbing it on my mat. And then I sanded all of the edges. Okay, so all of the edges are exposing the white. So this is, you know, a piece of pattern paper, but it's really printed on white. So the core of it is white. So when I sanded it, you can see some of the white left over. And then I needed to add just a touch of black. And so I did my little doodle lines all the way around the layout. The rest of it is just as designed. Now, I could take a page like this and I could add flip flaps to it very, very easily. 4x6 flip flaps if I wanted to add more photos. I could. There's a nice journaling piece here, but if I had some smaller photos or even wanted to add more of the story, I could add some flip flaps to any of these to, again, add more photos or add some hidden journaling in there. Okay, so that's the second of the layouts, but this one is my favorite. Okay, so this one is pretty much as designed. Okay, so it's right there, but there's this big, let me show you the big piece, the big picture here. Okay, so this is a little bit bigger. You can see that there's a lot of green space, or we call that white space, right? In scrapbooking, there's a lot of white space there. And so I needed to do a little something different, and I had the hexagon die out, and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna do tone on tone. I'm gonna cut a bunch of the hexagons, and I'm going to just make a pattern, because you could make a pattern with stencils, with stamps, just to kind of like go up in the corner here. So I wanted it to go here and then here, just to fill in a little bit of that white space. So I took that hexagon die and I cut hexagons, and then it also cuts, like I said, the border. So it has the tiny borders, and I just kind of spaced them out and kind of went here. And then I did the same over here. And then I was able to draw some journaling lines on the inside of this one to have that journaling space here, because that's what it shows in the directions. And then on the inside of these little flowers, which are die cuts, I put that that little flower gem that I was using on these cards. This one is yellow. In fact, that's the one I used. I used these little flower sequins on the insides of the flowers and pop the flowers up. So it's like a recessed little center of the flower, which I think looks really, really cool. So I'm really, really pleased with this one. And then the only other thing I added was just a strip of cardstock behind my title. And then I tore the edge there just to give it a little bit of flavor and pop it up a little bit on my page. And so love, love, love this meant to be workshop. So we went from fabulous, gorgeous, to really stepped up and elevated with just some really minor adjustments. And I'm very, very pleased with them. Okay, this next set of layouts is a set that I used, the Ocean Friends DSP, Friends of the Ocean stamp and die cut. And again, that same title stamp set documenting the day that was part of the celebration freebies. So I'm going to talk you through kind of what I did here. I was able to get a guide. Now, it was not a cutting guide. It was more of like a cut this color paper to this size. So not instructions like this. Cut this paper like this. It was not like that. It was literally written instructions of cut this color to this size. And there's a lot of paper gutting, meaning you cut the paper and you use the inside of it for other things. So it was a very intensive labor of love. It also had lots of die cutting with the bundle, the stamp and die bundle. Used some tags and then the spotlight on nature for the circles. So there was a lot of die cutting. I spent probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours cutting the pieces for the layouts, and then I spent probably like another 2 or 3 hours putting them together. So this was a very intensive labor of love, but I absolutely love these layouts, and I'm going to be using them for vacations, beach photos, cruise photos. I have several vacations that need to be done, as well as any kind of coastal trips that we have taken. So love these layouts. Now, this one has a lot of photos on it, so I'm excited about that. It says, oh, what a day, but you can see like the bright and colorful tones here with the pinks and the oranges, and then it gives that little pop of like aqua and a little pop of green. I love these colors. I think it's like very fun and whimsical for beach and ocean. Okay, so here's the first layout. Here's the second one. So again, there is a lot of paper gutting going on. So let me show you what that looks like on the back here. So I cut the pattern paper, the DSP, and cut out like a hole so that I could, so if I use this as my background, I no longer have this sheet of paper, right? And I'm using it twice. Then I can no longer use the stars, these stripes. I can't use any of it, right? So if I gut it, which means I cut it to basically make a 1-inch frame, then I can use that 10 by 10 piece of paper for other things. Then I took a piece of cardstock and did the same. And the cardstock I'm not so worried about because, we have cardstock, but it just makes it weightier, like weighs the layout down quite a bit. And you're only seeing a sliver of it. And then I put the white on top. Okay, so you're only seeing a really small sliver of that cardstock underneath. So it's like, do you do that? Do you not do it? Do you gut it? It's just kind of like the decisions that you can make. I love this layout because it really just uses some simple patterns of, strips of paper here, squares of paper over here. There's lots of places for photos. The embellishing clusters, again, I used a guide, like a very loose guide with some photos of someone that I follow. Another former close to my heart maker. I used some photos that she shared, and intensive labor of love, but I absolutely love, like I said, how these came out. So the background of this photo mat here is using the embossing folder, the Waves embossing folder. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but it just gives a little bit of texture behind there, which I think is so fun. And then just all the clusters of die cuts and these little crabs here. And on the previous layout, the bigger ones, not the little ones, are using the die to cut the paper. So this is actually the DSP right here. The die You use the die from the stamp bundle and it cuts out the shapes of the DSP, which I think is awesome. And then these smaller ones are fussy cut out of a different piece of the DSP that has a bunch of the sea creatures really small. So the starfish here, the seahorse here, those are all fussy cut out of that paper. Again, lots of tags, circles, and die cutting of these little like net things as well. Just gorgeous. I absolutely love how these came out. So that's the second one. Here's the third one. And so again, I'm gutting the paper, right, to save on the weight of the layout. I don't want the layout to be like super heavy in my book either. So this one takes the squares of paper, kind of turns them at the diagonal, uses the tags as like your banner type page. In fact, I think this one actually is supposed to go like this. Not that it really matters, but anyway. And then I cut a title on my Cricut. I just typed in tropical with a scripty font, and I typed in vibes with a kind of a more, not traditional, but like an all caps font that was kind of funky looking. And I cut it in 2 different colors. I made an offset so that it looks like it's a custom title. And then the title actually cut out a hibiscus flower, but it got kind of mangled on my Cricut. So I found a hibiscus flower stamp that I had in my stash, and I just kind of stamped it in there. So is it perfect? No, but does it work? Absolutely. Here are those lobster and crabs that are cut right out of the DSP with the die cuts. They are so awesome as like little embellishments on here. And then this little starfish here is also cut with the die cut set. So super fun layout. And then this is my final Ocean Friends layout. And this one, this is my own design, but I used a sketch, and my team, I am a part of a larger team, and our larger team with my upline and my second upline do sketch challenges every month. And we started that in January. And so this is January, this is the third one. And so they give us a sketch, and then we create artwork or a layout to go with that sketch, and then we post it and share with each other. And so I've been really trying to do the sketch every single month, and I have actually shared those layouts that I've made with you all. But this one I love as well. I love the colors of this, and so I was able to add in some glitter paper that is Summer Splash, which is this color right here. So I added in the Summer Splash glitter paper, and then I did a little something different with my photo mats where I used just different colors that I hadn't used on the other layouts for my photo mat. So I used the Lemon Lime Twist. I used a little lobster, and then a couple of tags and little tabs and some circles and some gems. And so similar embellishing like I used on the previous layouts. I used a little piece of white here for my journaling. And then I cut a title on my Cricut. Same way I did the last one. Actually, this one was a pre-made title that I found on Cricut. So I just typed in Beach Babes, and this is one of the ones that it popped up. And so I loaded it in and I cut it. This is a really thin font here, this little scripty one. And I don't think I would cut something quite as skinny and thin. It's just really hard to cut that on our cardstock. So I try to like stick with stuff that's just a little bit thicker. Like the previous layout had a thicker font, but this one, it still turned out well. And I just added a little bit of doodling to bring in that pop of black, and I love it. So thank you for joining me for this artwork share for what's on Jen's table in the month of March. Have a great day.